Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for you to listen to this next chat with lovely Laura Pitt from Balanced Bubbs. We talk all about the subtleness of trauma growing up for her and for children, her journey from when she was young all the way up to now, and the study and the wealth of knowledge that she has got working with young children in the early childhood sector. She also teaches mindfulness practices to children and educators and teachers. So it's a really beautiful, insightful conversation. I hope you enjoy. So, hello, Laura Pitt. Thank you for joining me today on
Hi.
Heartful Chat. So nice to have you here. I think I stumbled across your beautiful Instagram and was like, I've got to,
Yeah.
I've got to meet this girl. See what
Good.
she's doing in the world. Yeah. And you've just started your Instagram, is that right? Like you kind of, but
Yeah, so Balance Bubs is really new. Well, not really new. We started in the first class I ran was in July of this year, so only a couple of months ago. I guess the idea has been around for quite some time, but then getting it happening and implementing it
yeah,
and finding the right spaces is all really new as well.
yeah, it takes a bit of time for all of that.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah, for sure. So today I thought we could talk about how you got to Balance Bubs, how you got to
Mm-hmm.
where you are now, and
Mm-hmm.
talking about your journey as a child and kind of moving through as an adult now, and how that has impacted your world and where you're now. So let's start with that. So let's kind of dive into when you were a kid and what
Mm,
happened and
yeah.
yeah, yeah, let's do
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Start from there. What age do you want to start from?
Mm, I think from around, well, I think we should really start from infancy. Not that I can remember my
Yes.
absolute infancy. But I think, to start, I grew up with a super loving family. I had the necessities that we needed growing up. But I also grew up, and I guess a lot of people around my age, I'm in my mid 30s, will have grown up with some trauma. And trauma, I feel, is quite relevant in today's society, and people are aware of it. But I think sometimes trauma is associated with quite heavy experiences, such as physical abuse, sexual abuse, these sorts of realms. Whereas families and people today are more recognizing some signs of subtle trauma. So things like yelling in the household and slamming doors. And I was exposed to things like that growing up. So
Mm.
families fighting, voices being raised, doors being slammed. And in those times as a child, I retreated to, fight or flight spaces where I would go to my room and hide, or my body, I would have physical reactions where, your body would tense up or you would become quite frightened.
Mm.
And I feel that in those times and things that happened whilst I was growing up, they've affected me still today as an adult. That raised voices startle
Mm.
me if I hear them,
Yeah.
and if there's aggression in a household, I feel really affected by that. I've worked in early
Mm.
years for 15 years. And
Okay.
over the past few years, I've really started to delve a little deeper into trauma informed practices and what that means for children and people in general.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've started to learn some strategies that we can implement into early years
Beautiful.
classrooms. And I've realized that there is a huge gap for trauma informed practices and wellness for children.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm just, I'm
definitely.
just, I'm just going to take a deep breath. Sorry.
It's all right. Take a deep breath. Yeah,
Yeah, all good.
I think I work in early childhood as well, and
Mm-hmm.
have done that for many years too. And we're not taught this as an educator on
Mm-mm.
to
Yep.
how to be with children and how to be with children who have experienced trauma at their home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of behavior guidance in, I guess we call it olden days, it was all guided by fear. There was, if you don't eat this, you're going to get this. And if this doesn't happen, this is going to happen. It's always really consequential. And there
Yeah.
was a fear that if I didn't do something, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And, as research has developed and studies have developed, we understand that positive reinforcement is so much more healthier so much more healthier, is much more healthier
Yeah. Yeah.
for a child's overall
Yeah.
holistic development when it comes to them going into their, you know, youth years and teenage years, and
Yeah.
wellness and looking after ourselves. I know for me as an adult, it's huge, and it's something that we practice each day, and it's blasted on social media. But why are we not yet teaching children these skills? Why are we not incorporating breath work? Why are we not incorporating deep
Mm.
stretches and nervous system regulation with children? Because they're the ones that need it the most
And
coming into this.
it can start from
Yeah,
a young age as well, you know.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel that there can sometimes be a little bit of a, you know, judgment, you know, why should we be practicing these, you know, I guess holistic or woo-woo sort of practices with
Yeah.
children.
Mm.
But my question is, why not?
Yeah.
Because being able to give children skills, especially going from kindergarten to prep to primary school, and primary school into high school, when they're faced with these situations, when they are going into fight or flight, and they are, they're faced with these big challenges, being able to
Yeah.
have these skills to be able to regulate is so important for their overall world, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, when you think about early childhood, like in a daycare setting, a childcare setting,
Mm-hmm.
you are, I mean, a lot of the children are like, you think about the baby's room, the youngest
Yep.
room, they're
Yep.
experiencing it already. They're like, oh, I'm separated from my mom or my dad. I feel
Yep.
anxious. I feel separation anxiety. I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling all the emotions. I'm going to cry for the whole day. You know, they're
Yep.
feeling it already. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even if you think what we're teaching them isn't really sinking in, it actually is. Like, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
I think, yeah, and as well, something that's made me, I really want to push forward with this is being able to educate educators and families too. I'm a huge believer in, if we don't have the knowledge to proceed with what we want to do, how are we supposed to do it? And so I
yeah,
want to share this with everyone, and I want for people to be able to think that, okay, yeah, I'm recognizing this child is going into a bit of a fight or flight state, or they're displaying some symptoms of fear. What can I do to support them?
mm,
Because up until a little while ago, there weren't that many skills that were as highlighted in today's society to be able to support children and adults
yeah,
through such challenging times. I think another part of it is growing up. There's always so much pressure for kids and youth to be succeeding in everything that they do,
yeah.
academics and
Accomplishments.
sports. You know,
Mm,
a child's day is typically the moment that they wake up, you know, they are on, they're having breakfast, they're driving to school, mum or dad or caretakers are maybe on the phone taking meetings. Their
mm.
nervous system is already at a peak by the time they get to kindergarten. And the
Yeah,
moment that they step in the door, someone might come over and kick over a towel that they've done,
yeah.
and in that moment, they're going to melt down. And if an educator doesn't recognize that they've probably gone through a whole world of intensity before this moment, we can't respond in the appropriate ways.
Yes,
Typically, there'll be a response like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We can build another tower,"
yes,
and
exactly.
it's just not good enough.
Yeah, yeah. That does remind me of a time once when I was in a kindergarten and I had
Mm,
this little boy. He was just really stressed, kind of kicking me and like just didn't
yep.
want to be around me.
Mm,
Excuse me.
mm,
And then we went and built a tower together. And as we were building the tower, he tells me that, oh, dad took my little brother out today and not me.
yep.
I was like, oh, that's why you're upset. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
that you need to get, it feels like we need to ask better questions to
Mm.
understand what's going on at the core level.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing the children that you're working with. And, I'm not a parent myself, but I really hope that these skills can help parents. But as a
Yeah.
parent, if and when you have the opportunity, if you see that your child isn't in a atypical or a regular state that they are, having those conversations to ask what's happened. Because I think a lot of the time we click in for a quick fix. You know, if a child's crying, hey, I'm going to get you this. And same as adults, for me, if
Yeah.
one of my friends is crying, you're like, okay, what can I do? And I'm
Fix it.
running around like, I'll get you some water, or I'll
Yeah.
do this and that. Whereas in that time, and in that, you just need to be holding space for someone, and when they're ready and feeling regulated, to have a conversation to understand what's happened and what can I do to support you.
So how do you hold space, let's say for kids or
Yeah, for
yeah.
me, holding space is physically, mentally, verbally. So again, maybe I can do some comparisons of practices. If there is a child who is having a big tantrum, maybe some typical practice would be, hey, stop crying and, take a deep breath and, here, have a drink of water. Whereas in that time when a child or an adult or anyone is in that state of stress, all of the blood is rushing to the back of their brain, to the enigma, and they're not able to think in a typical pattern or be able to process anything as well as they would be. Their prefrontal cortex is all smacked about, and they need some extra help. So for
Yeah.
me, when a child is exhibiting some challenging behaviors or some big emotions, I will physically give space. So, maybe half a meter or so, I will demonstrate calm body language. So things like having my palms facing up to show a sign that, hey, I'm ready when you're here. I will take breaths myself to show that my body is calming. I will lower my voice to gently say to a child, when you're ready, I'm here to talk. And if the child continues, it's about having that child know that you're there, but not invading that space and giving them time to unwind. And slowly you will see children go from this really huge, like tensed up space, and you will slowly start to see physical signs. Firstly, their breathing may start to slow down a little bit, their hands may start to unclench, their face may start to get a little bit color back into it. Children's faces go really red. They may start to slowly stop crying. And
Mm.
as you start to see those physical signs, that's an invitation to you to potentially move in a little bit closer and close that space a little bit. So you can do that by slowly moving your body closer, or reaching out to saying some words like, I can see that that you're taking some deep breaths. Are you ready for me to come and sit next to you?
Yeah.
And having those conversations and really waiting. And it can take 5, 10, 15 minutes. And it's so important to be patient and to be respectful during that time, because any other movement that we could make could be contributing to some trauma.
Yeah.
Things like, hey, stop crying, it's really busy, we need to go. We don't know what that can impact later down the line.
Yes, definitely. And I think back
Mm.
to like moments in my adult life when someone has said to me, take a breath. And I'm like, like, don't tell
You're
me
like,
to
I'm
take
not
a
ready.
breath.
I'm not ready to take a breath
Yeah.
yet. And it's just a common thing. And I really keep going back to this. If people don't know, they don't know. And
Yes.
people are trying, I'm hoping most people are trying, to do something to help someone during that time. But if you don't have the knowledge, you can't apply the practice. So being able
Yeah.
to share this knowledge for me is so important, because if I can help someone along the way, if they can think back to think, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't try to do 1,000 things right now. Maybe I should just give my child space
Mm.
to be and to work through those emotions.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And so those are some tips that parents could actually take home, or
Mm,
caretakers and
mm, mm,
educators, nannies, everyone that's are listening that work with
mm,
little people or have little
mm,
people in their lives.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and so with your classes that you do at Balanced Bubs, do you sort of
mm.
bring in these kinds of experiences as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the classes run are typically around mindful movement. So being able to give children a space where they can move and feel free, and get to know their selves a little bit more. And what we talk about at the beginning, we have some dance music, a little bit techno. It's quite fun for the families that are there, and we bring ourselves up. We get excited. We're jumping around. We're moving around. And after a little while, we get to a point where we then sit down and we take space on our mat. And I ask for the children to recognize some of the signs that their bodies are showing. So some of these signs are typically they're feeling sweaty, or they feel a little bit out of breath, or, a bit shaky. And we talk about how these signs can be similar to signs of when you're feeling scared, or when you're feeling anxious, or when you're feeling upset. And we talk about being able to recognize them. So doing a body scan and thinking, okay, what does my mind feel like right now? Is it racing? Is it really busy? What does my breathing feel like right now? Can I catch my breath, or is it really intense? What does the rest of my body feel like? And then we talk about ways that we can then we call it bring ourselves back. So ways that we can bring ourselves back. So we then take space on the mat and try and work with just relieving some tension in our neck. We practice some deep breathing. We practice some mindfulness, just through sitting and being. And then we talk about a recheck-in to see, okay, what do we feel like now?
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, sometimes there'll be the odd child that's like, I'm still excited. But 9 times out of 10, children are able to then recognize, hey, I feel better, and I feel now ready to enter the next space where we practice some yoga moves. And I think something to touch on there as well is the importance of co-regulation. I'm not expecting often we think about children having to be self-regulated, and they need to have self-regulation skills to be able to regulate themselves. But prior to self-regulation, children require co-regulation. They need to be able to learn with someone how to regulate. So I'm doing that with them. I'm not telling them to breathe. I'm sitting by them saying, let's take some deep breaths, or sometimes we squeeze our palms together, or we'll draw some little circles. And so in that moment, I am co-regulating with the child, that in hopes they can go away. And if I'm not there, or if a parent isn't there, they can self-regulate.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And I suppose your years of working in early childhood would would have helped with having that sort of
absolutely.
You have to self-regulate all the time when you're working with children that capacity. So it's like a lot of people, I think a lot of adults kind of don't recognize that within themselves as well.
Yeah.
That they have. What are these tools? How do I self-regulate before I enter a space with children? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I really hope that Balance Bubs, moving forward as well. It's not just helping children, but helping families with some tips and tricks and skills on how to be able to regulate themselves, so that they can be the best parent, or the best teacher, or the best person that they can be. We have such a huge responsibility teaching children, and such a huge responsibility caring for children. And if we're not in the right state to be able to do so, it's detrimental to their health and well-being. And so it's so important that people are aware of that and have the skills and the tools to be able to process that.
Yeah, beautiful. And so what ages do you work with at the moment, like teaching through Balance?
Teaching, so I've been in early years for 15 years. I've taught predominantly, I teach with kindergarten age children from 3 to 6. But I have a lot of experience with nursery age children, but most of my trauma work is with kindergarten age children. About 4 years ago, I did a 6-month secondment out in Fitzroy Crossing, so a Aboriginal community 4 hours inland from Broome. And this is where I really started to delve deeper into trauma, because I learned about it. When I was in Fitzroy Crossing, I witnessed and, was friends with people who were still experiencing intergenerational trauma. And this was new to me, and something I wish I knew earlier. And when I started to understand the effects of trauma that are happening on people my age and people around me, I thought, okay, maybe I'm affected too. And the more I learned, I was like, okay, I am. And then from here, I thought, this needs to be taught. People need to know about this, and children need to be able to have the best start possible when it comes to their well-being. And so from there, when I came back to Melbourne, I studied trauma-informed practices. I hold a bachelor's degree in early years, but wanted to delve in a little bit deeper with that. And after my trauma-informed practices course, I'm still studying a diploma in counselling. So trying to pick up as many skills that I can to be able to push forward.
Yeah, gorgeous. And so the course is trauma-informed practices.
practices.
It's
Yeah,
called. Oh,
yeah.
okay. And does that, go through all ages, or is it like,
It goes through, yeah, all ages. So
okay,
from infants up until adults, it
yeah,
talks a little bit about the brain and brain development and how trauma affects the brain, and in return, how then we, I guess, develop and then exert trauma
yeah,
throughout the time. So it was really eye-opening. And then from there,
yeah,
firstly when I started to learn about trauma informed practices, I thought it was really rigid and we had to be doing X, Y, and Z. And the more that I've learned personally, I feel a lot of the informed practices are around these mindfulness practices and health and well-being for children.
yeah, beautiful. And when you were working in early childhood, did you bring in any of this, or is this sort of something you learned after?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I still work with children each day now. So I work in an educational leader space. So my role
Okay.
in an early years centre is informing the program and practice for teachers.
Yeah.
But I still work with children, and
Yeah.
I've seen such huge changes. I've worked specifically with a kindergarten age group of children this year from February, and we've
Mhm.
started to implement some of these practices, especially working with some children with additional needs, being able to implement some of these mindfulness practices,
Mhm.
being able to speak about emotions, mentoring teachers to hold space. And we've been able to see such huge changes in children's emotional intelligence and their behavior. Some conversations that I'll hear now when children are experiencing big emotions, I'll hear them say to one another, "Hey, can I have some space right now?"
Mhm.
Or, "Hey, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed," a 4-year-old used with me the other day.
Yeah,
And the fact that a
wow.
4-year-old can recognize this huge emotion and be able to verbally share that with me means
Yeah.
that child is
Amazing.
going to be able to let people know that he or she needs to hold space now, rather than an adult being able to intervene, so she can co-regulate.
Yeah.
And now for her going off to school at the moment in kindergartens in Victoria, you have a 1 to 11 ratio. It's one adult to every 11 children. So being able to cater to all of their individual needs can be challenging. And especially a lot of the work that we do is supporting children's transition to school. When
Yeah.
children go to school, they're going from having a teacher with them every day, that they know, and there's only a class of 20 or so, but going out to school when they're in a schoolyard and
Mm.
they are with 300-400 other children of that are aged from 5 up until 12,
Yeah.
they don't have as much support there, and they don't have a teacher that knows them yet as well as we may know them. And
Yeah.
so being in the yard and maybe being pushed over by a child, or being, there might be some bullying and some verbal, some
Yeah.
challenges in
Anything.
place.
Yeah.
That child hopefully now has the capacity to understand how to self-regulate and use some of those tools to be able to respond to behavior appropriately.
I mean, it's just amazing what you're doing. And
Thanks.
yeah, to hear that these young children of 4 years old to 5 are using those words like overwhelm
Mm,
and needing space and
mm,
anxiety and those sorts of things, I think it's just, I mean, it's something that we didn't have growing up. I
yeah.
think a lot of people didn't have that growing up, and it's
Mm,
definitely a generational thing. I feel like it's starting to change now.
absolutely. Yeah.
No, there's a lot more awareness around it. We've got social media now where everything's sort of
Mm-hmm.
plastered around and how to use positive language and how to hold space and
Mm,
that. But I think what you're doing, teaching the teachers and the educators how to
mm,
hold space for themselves or the people in their
mm,
lives, then they get
mm-hmm.
to feel it and embody it, and then they can start to teach it as well. I think that's,
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
yeah, because we can have all this knowledge that's thrown around on social media, but you read it, and if you're not actually embodying it, then how do you know how to
Yeah,
deliver it?
yeah. And I think it's about physically feeling it as well. So, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what you said. It's there. And, educators are learning this and families are learning this through social media or through their degree or the training that they do. But reading something and experiencing something are two different worlds, especially when it comes from a
Yes.
spiritual place as well, I think. So
Yes.
being able to be next to a teacher with a child who is having an emotional meltdown or, displaying these big emotions, being able to be next to a teacher, even, new graduates who have never experienced a child crying before, being
Yes.
able to be next to them, and for myself to physically take a breath and say to this person, okay, we're going to move back a little bit. That child is upset. And, typically a person's like, no, they need a hug and they need this. And I'm
Yeah.
going to go up and be with them. So showing them, okay, we're going to step back and just saying, watch what happens now. If the child comes to you and wants to hug you, it's an invitation to say, okay, I'm ready now. But typically if a child is especially throwing a physical meltdown where they, their back might arch, their body tenses up, they fling their arms around for yours and their safety, giving that space and showing a teacher. Sometimes I think teachers and parents may see holding space as, well, you're not doing anything, because
Yeah.
the child's there and you're here. And
Yeah.
especially in an early years setting, during drop off, this is the time where you're going to mostly see these behaviors.
Yeah.
I know it can be daunting, because if I have a child here who's having a physical meltdown, and two parents have walked in the room and I'm sitting, a meter away, and they're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
This is also a teachable opportunity to say to the families, if you can just give this child some space, they're having a bit of a tricky morning. I'm here for them, as you can see, but we're going to give them some space to themselves to help other people realize. I think this is a bit of a barrier. People are scared, what if someone sees me and thinks I'm not doing something? So long as we can communicate it,
Yeah.
it will really help.
And a lot of the time when we do give them that space, they're sitting there, you know, so, like regulating themselves. We're giving
Correct.
them space to
Correct.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, which, as you said, like coming in, giving them a hug, trying to fix is just adding to the anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel that this even branches down to nursery children. I feel a
Definitely.
lot of educators' responses are when infants are crying, they're to be picked up.
Yeah.
Absolutely, infants require some more physical support during those times, but understanding what else we can do to be able to support them. Is it a hand on the center of their back or a hand on the chest next to them and saying, breathing with a child to say, I'm here for you. I'm here
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Is it, sitting down next to a nursery infant, with an arm around them? And of course, this isn't, I'm really trying not to say don't hug children, because
No.
if they need it, if
Yes.
they need it, they will tell you, and it's so important to be there. A
Yeah.
nursery child will show you a cue by putting out their hands or looking up to you. But trying to think about some other ways that we can support them.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a really beautiful reminder. And so, Laura, I'm conscious of time. So,
Okay, yes, sorry.
no, I would love to keep chatting, and maybe we could do a
Mm-mm.
part 2 or something.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But one of the questions I always ask everybody is, how do you follow your heart? And
Mm.
what does it feel like? Let's start with, what does it feel like when you don't follow your heart?
Yeah, I have this saying that I refer to called going off track. When I'm not following my heart, I feel off track.
Mm,
And the ways that I feel off track is typically I'm not sticking to my routine and I'm not following my values in what I want to do.
yes. Yeah.
And I can feel it when I'm off track, because my body feels different, my mind feels busier.
Yes.
And when I'm following my heart, I feel on track. I feel aligned with the world. I feel aligned with my life and my space, and I'm moving
Mm,
forward. When I'm off track, I stay stagnant in everything and anything that I'm doing, and some,
yes.
tricky habits come in. But when I'm following my heart, I'm on track, and I don't need to be moving forward quickly, but each day I'm moving forward a little bit more.
And it sounds like your journey, I mean, obviously it hasn't been all smooth sailing and like everyone's
Mm-mm-mm.
journey through life, but it sounds like you've sort of followed your heart through what you've done professionally, and you still continue
Yeah,
to do that now. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, working with kids and now moving into Balance Bubs and, counselling and bringing in these
Yeah.
sorts of experiences and, ways that you can work one-on-one with kids. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think working one-on-one, obviously in the group settings, but I'm hoping that Balance Bubs, the page in itself, becomes more of an educational platform for teachers, families, and children. So
Mm.
little educational moments on what to do in this situation and what to do in this situation. So watch this space, because I'm
Oh,
hoping it can be a bit of a safe space where people can go to and think, okay, I'm stuck with the situation, click on a video or click on a reading to gain some information, or like you said, definitely one-on-one coaching for parents, for families, for educators, one-on-one
yeah.
sessions with children, and then the yoga classes.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I really look forward to seeing it kind of blossom and grow.
Yeah,
And
same.
yeah, can't wait to sort of see that grow because, I mean, everybody needs what you're offering. And I feel like with your
Hmm.
experience and, wealth of experience that you've had working in the education system, especially early childhood, and now your
Mm,
study, it just feels like it's in this springtime, it's just sort of starting
yeah,
to really grow and blossom. So,
for
uh,
sure.
yeah, so I'm so thankful for what you're doing in the world.
Thank
Sure.
you.
I'm sure lots of children are as well, and parents and educators. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, maybe we will do a part two and we can talk more about your journey when maybe in a year's time and we'll see where you're at then.
where I'm at. Yeah,
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for joining me and sharing what you know, your knowledge today. And where
Mm.
can people find you?
So my main source of being is on Instagram. So Balance Bubs. We're going to come to TikTok soonish.
Yeah.
But if you find us on Balance Bubs, Bubs with two B's, Bubbs.
Mhm.
This is where you'll find some information about our upcoming classes, but soon information about things like breathing techniques for children, some gentle stretches for children, some educational information for families and teachers.
Amazing. Beautiful. And you have a website as well. Is that still going?
The website isn't going at the moment. We're
Okay.
just strictly Instagram, but yeah,
Okay.
stay tuned.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us and
Thank
yeah, and
you.
your
It was good to
blessing in
have
the
you.
world.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.